Hello everyone, and welcome back to Apple English, where learning English is always fun and exciting. Today, we're taking you on a journey far beyond Earth, to a place that has inspired scientists, dreamers, and storytellers for centuries. Yes, you guessed it, we're talking about Mars, also known as the Red Planet. So, are you ready to travel across space with us and discover everything about Mars while practicing your English? Let's go. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun right after Earth. It's one of our closest neighbors in the solar system, and it has fascinated people for a very long time. But why is it called the Red Planet? Well, that's because its surface is covered with reddish dust. The rocks and soil on Mars contain a lot of iron, and when that iron reacts with oxygen, it turns into rust, just like a rusty nail on Earth. That's what gives Mars its beautiful but mysterious red color. Now you might be wondering, how big is Mars compared to Earth? Mars is actually much smaller. It has about half the size of Earth. But even though it's small, Mars has a lot of interesting features, like mountains, valleys, deserts, and even ice caps at the North and South Poles, just like Earth. And speaking of interesting, let's look at some facts that will surprise you. Mars takes 687 Earth days to go around the Sun, which means a year on Mars is almost twice as long as a year on Earth. But a single day on Mars is only a little longer than an Earth day, about 24.6 hours. So if you ever visit Mars, you won't feel too jet-lagged. Now here's something cool. Mars has two tiny moons. Their names are Phobos and Deimos. These moons aren't round like our moon. Instead, they look like giant potatoes floating in space. Funny, right? And here's a fun science fact. If you weighed 50 kilograms on Earth, you'd only weigh about 19 kilograms on Mars. That's because Mars has much lower gravity than Earth. But why is that? Well, it comes down to size and mass. Mars is much smaller and lighter than Earth. In fact, its total mass is only about 10% of Earth's mass, and gravity depends directly on mass. So, with less mass pulling things down, the gravity is much weaker. Also, Mars has a smaller radius, but not enough to make up for the lighter mass. So in the end, gravity on Mars is only 38% of Earth's gravity. That's why you'd feel much lighter and could jump a lot higher, maybe even feel like a superhero. But before you start packing your bags for Mars, you should know that the weather there isn't exactly beach-friendly. Mars is extremely cold and dry. The average temperature is minus 63 degrees Celsius, and that's freezing. Even worse, there are huge dust storms on Mars. These storms can cover the whole planet and last for weeks, turning the sky yellow and blocking the sun. So, why is Mars so cold? One reason is that Mars is much farther from the Sun than Earth, about 228 million kilometers away, compared to Earth's 150 million. That means Mars gets less sunlight and heat. But that's not the only reason. Mars also has a very thin atmosphere. It's about 100 times thinner than Earth's. And this thin atmosphere can't hold heat well. Once the sun goes down, the heat escapes quickly back into space. On top of that, even though Mars has a lot of carbon dioxide in its air, it doesn't create a strong greenhouse effect because the air is just too thin. So Mars can't trap heat like Earth does, and that's why it's so cold. Now let's talk about something even more fascinating, the metals and minerals found on Mars. Besides iron, Mars also contains magnesium, aluminum, calcium, potassium, and titanium. These metals are important for building machines, spacecrafts, and maybe even future buildings on Mars. Scientists believe that one day we could use these metals to construct homes and tools for humans living on Mars. There are also traces of nickel and chromium, which are valuable for strong and corrosion-resistant materials. So, in a way, Mars could become like a cosmic hardware store, full of useful materials for future explorers. Now, although humans have never stepped foot on Mars, we've sent many robots and spacecrafts to explore it. The first successful landers were Viking 1 and 2, sent in 1976. Then came the famous rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, which rolled across Mars in 2004 and discovered signs that water once existed there. In 2012, Curiosity landed, a large, smart rover that's still exploring today. More recently, in 2021, NASA sent Perseverance, a high-tech rover looking for signs of ancient life. And let's not forget Ingenuity, a small helicopter that became the first aircraft to fly on another planet. Isn't that amazing? These missions have taught us so much about the history of Mars, and they are helping us get ready for something even bigger, sending humans to Mars. But here's a big question that scientists are still asking. Could there be life on Mars? So far, we haven't found any proof. No aliens, no fish, not even bacteria. But many scientists believe that long ago, Mars had rivers, lakes, and maybe even oceans. And where there's water, there could be life. This is why we keep sending rovers to search for clues. If we ever find signs that life existed on Mars, it would be one of the biggest discoveries in human history. Now imagine this. What if humans could live on Mars someday? That's the dream of many space scientists and companies like SpaceX. But it wouldn't be easy. Mars has almost no breathable air, so we'd need special spacesuits. There's no liquid water on the surface, so we'd have to find ice and melt it. And don't forget, it's freezing, and there's no magnetic field to protect us from harmful radiation. Still, scientists are working on ideas like underground homes, Mars greenhouses, and even creating oxygen from carbon dioxide. It sounds like science fiction, but it might become real in our lifetime. Before we finish, let's enjoy some fun facts about Mars that you can share with your friends. Mars is home to the tallest volcano in the solar system, called Olympus Mons. It's almost 3 times taller than Mount Everest. It also has a giant canyon, Valles Marineris, which is 10 times longer than the Grand Canyon. Mars sometimes shines so bright in the night sky that you can see it with your own eyes, no telescope needed. In Roman mythology, Mars was the god of war. That's how the planet got its name. And here's something funny. In Spanish, Tuesday is called
martes,
which comes from Mars. Isn't that interesting? And finally, you may wonder, why do we study Mars so much? Why do we care about this cold, dusty red planet? Well, by learning about Mars, we can understand more about our own planet Earth. Mars teaches us how planets change, what makes life possible, and how to protect our home. And maybe, just maybe, Mars is our next home in the future. So who knows? Maybe someone listening to this podcast today will become an astronaut, travel to Mars, and help build a new life there. Thank you so much for joining today's episode of Apple English. If you enjoyed learning about Mars with us, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and come back for more stories about space, science, and English. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning. Goodbye and see you soon.